But one very important lesson for you to learn is that you should not act as if the things that should happen are the things that will happen. Again, in the world of the physical sciences, you can probably bet that that's true. And the electrical engineer knows that if he turns on a light switch over here, the light will go on there every time, because it's subject to physics, not in the world of investing. And so for every possible phenomenon, there is a range of things that can happen. There may be one where it's possible to discern which one is the most likely. And if we draw a probability distribution, that may be the highest point on the distribution, the most likely single outcome. But that doesn't mean it's going to happen. And the reason we don't have many probability distributions that look like this, but rather that look like this, is because a range of things can happen. And it's very, very important to notice that, number one, there are lots of things that can happen, so you have to allow for them. And number two, the thing that is most likely to happen is far from sure to happen. So that's very key. There's a professor at the London Business School who put it succinctly. He said, risk means more things can happen than will happen. And this is profound, in my opinion. In the economic world, people generally make their decisions based on something called expected value, which is to say that you multiply every possible outcome. First of all, of course, you don't think in terms of a single outcome. You think in terms of a range of outcomes. So you take every, if you could iterate over so many, you take every possible outcome, you multiply it by the likelihood that it will happen, you sum the results, and then you get something called the expected value from that course of action. And you choose your course of action based on the highest expected value. And that sounds like a totally rational thing. But what if the course of action that you're considering has some outcomes that you absolutely can't withstand? Then you may not do it. You may not do the highest expected value course of action because it has some you can't live with. You know, who here is willing to be the skydiver who was right 98% of the time, for example. So you may elect to do bike riding on the Google campus rather than skydiving, even though skydiving is more exhilarating 98% of the time. Anyway, so the point is, as I lived my life, from learning about Dimson, learning about Taleb, from learning from my own experience, I realized that should does not equal will. Lots of things that should happen fail to happen. And even if they don't fail to happen, they fail to happen on schedule. So the thing that the economist or the financier thinks should happen this year may happen in 3 years. You got to live 3 years to see it happen. One of my favorite sayings is, never forget the 6-foot-tall man who drowned crossing the stream that was 5 feet deep on average. We can't live by the averages. We can't say, well, I'm happy to survive on average. We got to survive on the bad days. You got to survive, and if you're a decision maker, you have to survive long enough for the correctness of your decision to become evidence. And you can't count on it happening right away. I always remind people, overpriced is not the same as going down tomorrow. And if you bear that simple truth in mind, I think it helps.